All right. So I am so stoked about tonight. We got tonight is going to be packed full of information. I'm gonna start off with talking a little bit about what the purpose of this event is, and I kind of want to. There's a lot of new faces. I want to make sure that everybody has a full understanding of why we're here. What are we doing here? What is the goal? So first thing, the purpose of this event is to encourage mental, relational, spiritual, and financial growth through sharing of experience and knowledge. I've been inspired by Benjamin Franklin, who created the Junto group, or I don't know if it's Junto, Junto, everybody says it different, so I'm not sure if I got it right, but his group met on a regular basis, and they talked about all of these items, and I've personally seen in my life, through the experience that I've had with my mentors and my network, has played a huge role in my growth. And it's personally, it's professionally, it's financially, and so I wanted to create an event where we can share those kinds of things. And so that's why we're here. That's what's tonight. So I got 2 rules. 1, we don't fight. 2, we don't desire victory over others. That's really important to me. We'll be having people ask questions. People will be commenting. There will be things like that we'll be talking about. And I want everybody to feel free to ask questions. When we ask questions, we grow, right? We're not going to grow unless we're learning through things. And it's really easy to kind of clam up and not ask any questions because we're afraid that our question is going to be insulted by somebody else that's going to say, "Oh, that person's stupid. They don't know what they're talking about." So I'm probably the question, I don't know what you call me, like the questionaholic, I guess. I ask a lot of questions, and I don't want any of you to feel like you're being made fun of. So a little background on myself. Some of you know me very well. Some of you don't. Currently, I'm running 8 businesses with my business, most of which with my business partner Patrick Vollmer. He's right there in the nice jacket and white shirt. If you get a chance, he has been a massive blessing in my life. We go back a number of years now, and I met him. I was a tenant in his property, and I got to start talking with him. And I was going through some self-help program, and they were talking about the need for a mentor. And after talking with Patrick, I was like, "Wow, you're really doing stuff, and you're doing stuff in the way that I want to do stuff. You care about people. You want to grow people. You want to make a difference." And I was like, "That's what I want to do." And I said, I was running like a chicken with a head cut off and doing a bunch of stuff. Wasn't really getting the traction I felt like I needed to get. And I said, "Hey, would you step into my life and would you mentor me?" And it was like asking a girl out. It was so awkward. I remember I called him up and I was like, "Hey, Patrick, you wanna go out? I'm gonna show you what we do, what I do for a living." And he's like, "Yeah, I'll go." And so we go out, and I'm like, sit in the car, and I'm like, should I talk to him? Should I ask him? Should I not? I don't know if I should talk to him or not. Like, I don't. This is really awkward. And finally, I was just like, okay, I took you out today because I wanted to ask you to be my mentor. And he's like, sure. And I was like, really? I stressed out for like 2 weeks straight. I'm like so nervous about asking him, and I don't know why I was so nervous. It was pride. That's what it was. It was pride. I was so proud of who I was, and I felt really uncomfortable and insecure about asking for help. And I have to say, that was the pivot. That was the pivot. Humbling myself and asking for help and saying, I need to grow. I want to do more. And when I did that, I started to grow. And from there, it became a once-a-month thing. The first month we met up, he asked me questions the entire time, which is really weird because I ask a lot of questions. And he just asked me questions for about 45 minutes straight. And I was like, when am I going to start learning something? and then shortly after, he finally he summarized in like about 2 minutes and was like, okay, here's 2 tips for you. Why don't you read this book, and why don't you try this? And I was like, okay. So I went back. I read the book. I tried the couple things that he had suggested I do, and I said, hey, can we meet up again? And he's like, sure. If you complete these things, then let's meet up in a month. So we meet up. We're supposed to meet up in a month. I go to the coffee shop. I'm sitting there. 5 minutes goes by. He's not there. 10 minutes goes by. He's not there. 15 minutes go by. He's not there. And I'm like, did he forget the day? Should I call him? Should I not call him? I don't know if I'm supposed to call him or not. And I was like, and then about 30 minutes in, I'm like, I think he's not coming. And so anyways, I finally call him or text him, and he's like, yeah, I totally forgot. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that we were meeting up today. And I was like, well, can we meet up again? And he's like, sure, we'll meet up on such and such date. So I go, and anyways, we started our monthly meetup, and he was consistently meeting up with me after that. And then it went from monthly to every other week, and then it went from every other week to every week. And then, sure enough, we started doing some deals together, and we hit it off. So it's been a huge blessing. If you get a chance, he usually sticks around a little bit after. Get a chance to talk to him. He's a wealth of knowledge, and he has helped shape me and grow me quite a bit. So, anyways, currently running 8 businesses, 7 of which I'm running with Patrick. We're currently employing over 50 people. Combined revenue is over 8 figures currently. I want you to be rich. That's a real thing. Like, I really want you to be rich. And that may sound cheesy, but I totally mean it. You may say, I don't need any money. I can help others with what I have. And the truth is that what happens when you run out, right? At some point, you give everything you have and you don't have anything else. So I want you to be rich. I want you to make more money. I want you to learn ways to grow. Because what I believe is it's extremely difficult to be rich without helping others. And I'm gonna look at some examples here. You see this car here. We've a few of you have seen this picture before, and we've had this talk. But for those of you that haven't been here, this car takes a lot of people. If you look at this car, there's glass, there's rubber, there's aluminum, there's carbon fiber, there's steel, there's all kinds of different components inside this vehicle. And it takes hundreds of people to be able to put this car together. And if you buy this car, you're employing a whole bunch of people. You're helping people. And I think that's awesome. So I'm going to give it a few more examples. One, you look at this, and this is, I believe, diamonds and emeralds, I think. If you've ever done any mining or rock hunting, it is extremely difficult. And when you buy something like this, which I hope that some of you are able to do at some point, you're employing other people. You're employing the miners. You're employing the guys that are selling the equipment to find this stuff. You're employing the trucks that drive back and forth. You're employing the restaurants and the hotels and the housing and all of these other places. You're stimulating the economy, and I think it's a beautiful thing. Here's another example. I think you should have a big house. I love it. I think having a big house is awesome. It takes a lot more people to build a house like this than it does a 500 square foot single, studio home or a 1-bed, 1-bath home. So when you buy a home like this, there is hundreds of people that are going to be working on this job. There are hundreds of people or thousands of people that are making the materials that go into this house. You are making a major difference when you're buying these things. I want you to buy a boat. And if that's not good enough, buy a boat and a boat. And so we're gonna teach you how to increase your income. We want to teach you how to increase your passive income. We want to increase your net worth. And this event is one way of doing that. We are meeting up on a monthly basis to go through this content and to dig in. And so tonight we're going to be talking with Jeff Davis, who's with Charles Schwab. He's going to be presenting, or he's going to be talking about how you can invest using Charles Schwab. He's also got a guy with him named Austin. He does daily trading, and he's very well versed in doing that. So I'm very excited to have them here. But I also want to make sure that we're digging in deeper and looking at, how we can help our community as well. So we've brought in Dave Wall with Union Gospel Mission. He's got a number of different people that will be speaking tonight. I'm very excited about, because I think they go hand in hand. When we make money, we're helping people, and you can do it either selfishly, you can do it, and I'm okay with selfish, okay? I want to make that perfectly clear. I think it's cool when you buy a nice car. I think it's cool when you buy a nice watch. I think it's cool when you buy nice things, but I also think it's even cooler when you do things for other people. And the Union Gospel Mission has definitely has a place in my heart. I have been supporting them for many, many years. I kind of grew up supporting their business, and we haven't stopped. So I'm excited to have them talk. If you want to take it one step further than just meeting up on a monthly basis, we have what's called the Inner Circle. And the Inner Circle is a group of individuals that say, I love this, and I want to take it even further. I want to take action in my life. I want to pursue financial success. And I told Dave Wall this morning, I said, you know what? I'm awful at everything. I was like, I'm really bad at almost everything. I can't dance. I can't sing. I can't, I really can't read very well, can't write very well. I'm terrible at athletics or, athletic things. And there's very few things that I'm good at, but I believe that God's given me a gift in business, and I'm leaning into it. I am leaning into that ability, and I'm here to share what I know about how to make more money and how to grow, because I think it's the one thing he's taught me. It's the one thing he gifted me with. And it would be bad for me to just hold it to myself. I feel compelled to share those things with you. And for me, it's really important. So I've created what we call the Junto Club Mastermind event, which is this. I've also created what's called the Inner Circle. And we meet up with a number of individuals on a weekly basis to dig deeper. And we talk about where you're at right now, what you're doing right now, and what you could be doing different, and what you could be doing to grow. It's a beautiful group. We talk about roses, buds, and thorns. These are things that are going really well with your business. We talk about things that you're looking forward to, and we talk about the things that are going bad. And we're honest with each other. We talk about the things that are terrible, things that are really stressing us out, things that are making us sick, things that are keeping us up over all night. And we get to share that with a group that cares about us, that loves us and wants us to grow. We also do a weekly, or on a monthly basis, we do an activity. So we've gone up to different places and done an activity. So we did a 3-mile walk up at a Medical Lake. We did about a 2-mile walk up to the Lincoln Heights Park and the pond, and took a hike up there. And it's really neat to get to be with other people that are like-minded, that want to grow, that want to make a difference, and to talk about what's going on in our lives. And so we've been doing that. And then once a month, we bring in an expert. We bring in somebody that is very good at what they do, and we, on a small scale, get to just bombard them with questions and ask them, how do we do this? How do we do that? How do we do this? So we had a CPA speak with our group. We also had an insurance broker speak with our group, and we've got many, many, many more experts that we'll be bringing in. So the exclusive Inner Circle access, if you're interested in doing it, I want to make sure it's really clear. I'm not doing this to make money. not at all. This event doesn't make me any money. The inner circle doesn't make me any money. We do charge to be part of the inner circle. It's not to make money. And you can ask anybody that's in the group. They know it's not to make money. The goal is to make sure that the people that are in this group are serious. That's why we charge. If you want to come to this event, I'm very excited to have you here, and we will continue to do this on a monthly basis. But if you are interested in doing the inner circle, we want to make it a serious thing. And so we charge to do that. If you want to talk more about it, talk to Nathan, talk to myself. It includes the monthly event, includes a weekly meetup. We talk about roses, buds, and thorns. We do an activity. We have experts. We do one thing that I'm also offering is a ride-along. If you're interested in having me take a deep dive, look, it's the one thing that I think God's gifted me with is business. And if you want me to take a look at your business and you want me to give you some advice or to check out what's going well in your business, what's going bad in your business, I would be really happy. I'm excited to help you with that if I can. So I do a ride-along with you. Or you can do a ride-along with me. Me is a little bit more boring. You would be a lot more fun. We always include the meals, mentorship. You always have access to me. Call me, text me, email me, anything you want. Coaching, and then you'll have access to my contacts. I know a lot of great people. Steve Yoshihara is amazing. Patrick is amazing. Nathan's amazing. We got so many people in this group that is just dynamite. So you'll have access to my contacts. You're welcome to bring a spouse or a business partner, and I do a money back guarantee. So if you decide you want to do it, I don't care at any point you decide you don't like the group or you don't think it's worth your money, I'll give you 100% of your money back. I don't care if you're 1 month in, I don't care if you're 6 months in, I don't care if you're 12 months in, I'll give you 100% of your money back because I believe that we're going to make a difference. We're going to jump in and start talking with Dave Wall. So Dave Wall, Dave, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure.
Let's have Dave introduce himself. Thank you. I feel so blessed to have Dave at this event. He has been. You're gonna switch us over. He has been a family friend for a long time. How long has it been?
How old are you?
34.
34 years.
Really?
I knew James before he was James. I know his parents really well. His dad's name is James.
Yep.
And his dad has done business with Union Gospel Mission for 32 years. So I think I knew you before then.
That's amazing. So we go way back.
Yeah, we do.
I'm gonna hand it over to Dave, and we're gonna have you talk about what you guys do. So thank you.
James, thank you.
I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, thanks for letting me come tonight, James, and it's good to have Steve here. He's a plant from Union Gospel Mission. He's a board member. I think my boss sent him over here to see how it goes tonight. Is that right, Steve? So I hope I do good. So, well, it's great to be with you. I've worked at UGM for 33 years just this month, and I said I would just give it 2 years. But I think most guys are always looking for greener grass, and I feel like I found my greener grass. So when I found that early, I wanted to invest myself in a place that was life-changing, not only for me, but for the people I work with. Definitely did that. So I wanted to start off by telling you I have a couple awesome guests. I've got Raj Schneidmiller. He's the owner of Sterling International. You guys have probably all bought the bug pest control traps, right? So he brought a few of those. We're going to do a little raffle, and you might win one. So, and he doesn't want to go home with any, right, Rod? So, and then we've got Carmel Kitchen Owners, which is a real thriving business in Coeur d'Alene. Is it Hayden or Coeur d'Alene? Coeur d'Alene. And they brought one of their employees with them that happens to be one of our former clients from UGM Women's and Children's Center in Coeur d'Alene. So has everybody heard of UGM and know what we do? Okay, I'm just going to assume you know that we help homeless men, women, and children. So when I first started working for UGM, I was in the healthcare field, and I came up, I hate to say it, from California, but that was 30 years ago, so don't hold it to me. I've proven myself. I can drive, so in the snow. So, but anyways, when I first came to UGM, I really didn't know much about helping homeless people. Anybody ever work with homeless people? That's where I was at. So we had a building downtown, and some of you are probably too young to know, but there was a building that was right at the corner of Brown and Spokane Falls Boulevard. That was kind of a grungy old building. It held about 65 guys, and we had 120 men coming every night. And about 6 months or so after I started working for UGM, it was a Friday like tomorrow is, and I was getting ready to go home at the end of the day, and I was kind of excited to go home for the weekend. And I had to park my car around kind of the back alley of the Mission. And there was a gravel lot back there. And I'm coming around the back, and there's a homeless guy leaned up against the rear tire of my car. It's like, oh, great. This is going to get messy. So it's like I was kind of anxious to go home, and I didn't really want to deal with another situation, to be honest. So I did lean down and ask the guy, can I help you? I didn't want to just get in my car and drive away. So the guy looks up at me, and he says, yeah. He says, I want to go home with you. It's like, okay. I said, well, why don't I take you to the Mission? I said, we got warm beds, we got a good meal, I'll get you a shower. He says, I'm not staying in any damn Mission, I'm coming home with you. It's like, okay. So the guy has on a trench coat, long scraggly hair, mirror sunglasses, and a baseball hat. And so I couldn't really see his eyes, but he stands up, he's bigger than me, and he says, I'm coming home with you. And I'm thinking, this is going to be interesting how I'm going to explain this one to my wife. So anyways, I said, well, let's see what we can do. And so he takes off his baseball hat and throws it on the ground like he's mad at me. And then he takes off his mirror sunglasses. And then he reaches up and he takes his wig off, which was his hair. And I realize I'm looking in the face of my brother. Okay, my brother lives in California. My wife picked him up at the airport, and he dressed up like a homeless dude and wanted to see if I was a good UGM employee. It's like, what are you thinking? So I about had a heart attack that day. But anyways, I found out why he wanted to come home with me. And I probably should have left him at the Mission that night. But I'm telling you that story because it dawned on me a little bit later that if I just look at people on the outside and I judge their external appearance, their hair, their attitude, their smell, whatever, their anger, I'm not going to want to help that person. I'm going to probably judge them. But if I can get past those layers on the exterior and see what's really going on inside, I'm going to find out that person's my brother or a sister that needs help. And that has kept me going over the years at UGM. And I love going to work every day because it's like, these guys are our brother. And yeah, they have attitudes. And yeah, they've had a lot of things go wrong. But we're here to figure out what's driving that behavior and what's driving their addiction. And that's what UGM does. We give people a second chance. So I want to show you a quick presentation here of a few things that we do for UGM. And then I'm going to invite the Carmel Kitchen folks up, and then Rod's going to come up, and we're going to give you kind of a snapshot of how we help the homeless. And most of you, if I asked you, how do you think is the best way to help the homeless? I could have a show of hands, but I bet you would say, feed them, clothe them. That's our starting point. And that used to be all that we did. But there's so much more going on besides just food, clothing, shelter. That's just the Band-Aid. So we do apply a Band-Aid because people have emergency needs. But we go into what we call open heart surgery without the anesthesia. So we want to get inside of your life and find out what is driving your addiction. Because we know addiction is the medication for pain. And if you've been traumatized or you've experienced a lot of pain in your life, you're going to try and cover it up with something that makes it go away. When you go to the dentist and you have to be drilled on, what do? You get numbed out because you don't want to deal with the pain. So what do you think a homeless person does who's been raped or abused or beat up by their drunk dad? And I'm betting somebody in here has had that happen, so you can relate to that. But that's the people we're dealing with. And that's what's driving addiction in most cases. So let's go through a real quick PowerPoint.
We believe every person is created in the image of God with immeasurable beauty and worth. that people should not be defined by their present condition or past mistakes. We are all broken. We need each other. Healing for our brokenness begins with connection, with understanding how much we are loved by a good God. And with healing comes change, the potential for joy and meaning. No one was created for mere survival on the streets, for an existence blurred by mind-numbing substances. Each person is created with a purpose, a unique gift no one else can offer the world. Our job is to help them rediscover it. Real people, real change. Union Gospel Mission.
And behind all of those faces are people who have a real story, and they just look like normal people. They could be sitting in here, and you would never know. So we started in 1951, and so there was a homeless problem in Spokane, probably not too much homeless problem going on in North Idaho. Seems like there never really is. You guys are doing something right, or else you're sending them all to us in Spokane. But we started off, this is a picture of classic Skid Row. This is the way it was in the 50s, with lots of homeless people jumping off trains at Riverfront Park, because that was where the switchyard was. And the train would go through there, and guys would jump off the train and set up cardboard boxes around before it was even the park. So a little old lady named Bonnie Martin, look at this lady with this guy. I mean, this lady was gutsy. She started the first soup kitchen in Spokane, and she started this little program where she would just feed people and have a chapel service every night of the week. And so she was really the one who kind of pioneered the UGM. But it got so big for her that she couldn't deal with the problems that were coming her way, and she was just one little old lady in her late 70s. So she called up this guy, a businessman in Spokane named Albert Aaron. And Albert Aaron is a guy a lot like you who was starting a business, not starting one, but running a business called A&K Meats. And so he was a meat market guy, and he had a couple of them in Spokane. He was also the chairman of the board at Whitworth, then college, now Whitworth University. So he was really busy. And Bonnie came to Albert and said, "Would you take over my shelter? I don't know where to go with it. It's just too many people and too big of a problem." And he said, "Well, I'm too busy." So he told her no. And so then a guy in this picture, one of the guys in this picture showed up, and he was from Minnesota, and he was part of a union of gospel missions. So there's 300 union gospel missions around the country. And this other businessman said, "Albert, would you think about running a shelter in Spokane?" So I guess when God knocks twice, it's time to answer the door. So he said yes. And so he started investing in getting a UGM started in Spokane, and he got his 12 other businessmen together, kind of like you guys, all gathering for a dinner and something with a purpose, and they all saw that there was a huge homeless problem downtown. And they got together at the Oasis Hotel and all pitched in money and raised some bonds, and they ended up buying this building downtown for $68,000. And so we bought a place for people to sleep and a place where they could get a little longer term help. So has anybody seen this building or remember it? Okay, some of you old guys like James. So this is the building where I bumped into my brother. So this is 1952, and we remodeled it, and we were there for 38 years, and then it got overcrowded. So this is not a great picture, but you can see we had packs of people, just scores of people coming in every night. And so we were so busy, we had to look for another place to go. But I loved Albert's theme, or his motto, I guess you could call it. He said, "Our aim is not free meals, but freed persons. Not free beds, but free beings." It's not a good to be a charity that's just keeping people dependent on you, right? And that's what a lot of charities do. They want to keep you dependent on them because then they feel a sense of need. We're about change. So we don't want to make you just come to us for food, clothing, and shelter. We want you to actually want to move on in your life and become non-homeless. So we do a lot more than just feed people. That's just kind of the first entry level. I'd say that's like the emergency room. So we ended up having a lot of growth these last few years. We don't take any government money. It's all business owners and individuals and churches and some civic clubs. and even some schools get behind us and help us raise the money. And we have an $11 million budget, which is pretty steep budget. And we have 186 employees. We had 8 when I started, and so God's really been blessing the mission over the years, and it's been fun to work for a place where God's blessing has been poured out. So we have that men's shelter. This is a women's crisis shelter. This is like the emergency room for women right off the street. And Ogden Hall is a long-term shelter for women who have addictions or codependency issues or suffered domestic violence. So women can stay here up to 18 months. Has anybody been by the UGM in Coeur d'Alene? This is right down off Highway 95 in Haycraft. So it is really backyard to you guys, a lot of you. And we're going to hear from the folks that I brought with me who can tell you they've partnered with UGM in Coeur d'Alene. This is just a women's shelter, no men there. But we do help women with children also. And you're going to get to hear Elizabeth in just a moment because she was one of the gals who went through our program there. So it's about an 18-month program for women to get through our recovery. We also have a camp out in Ford, Washington, which is about an hour outside of Spokane. So we help a lot of disadvantaged kids during the summer who would never be able to afford to go to a traditional camp. So that's an aerial view. A business owner named Dick Shanks, he owned this property. It's 125 acres. And he did kind of his summer vacations out there with his kids. And when he got older, he decided, I want to give this back to God. And if the mission can use it to help disadvantaged kids, I want to give it to them. So who gives 125 acres on the Spokane River away? So Dick Shanks did that. We have 2 thrift stores. So we had to find a way to help people find employment. If you don't have a job lined up before you leave the mission, then you're going to stay homeless. So we realize it's not just getting you through your drug and alcohol addiction or helping you find a purpose that God has for you, but we also have to help you find a job. And so we really want to get you employed. And so the mission will employ unemployable people at our thrift stores and at UGM Motors. So anybody ever drive down Auto Row in Spokane? So we have a car dealership, and somebody started giving us cars, and then we were selling them on the internet, and it just kept happening. So we ended up buying this big car lot. Now we have 300 titles. That's a lot of cars that are all donated. Sometimes they're Corvettes. Sometimes they're Thunderbirds. It's like, who's giving that stuff away? So, but people are giving us these cars so we can sell them, and the proceeds help us employ people and also go back to helping the homeless. So, okay, so I'm going to have to really hurry here. So this is what we see today in Spokane. You see tons of people flying signs, begging for money, but we have become so kind of desensitized to homeless people on the streets that you can almost think, why don't they just get a job? Or why don't they get a life? Or why don't they just get off drugs? And so the problem is so big in Spokane, meth is so prevalent and so cheap and so easy to get that you can get overwhelmed by it and you can get cynical. I know I can even get cynical, and I work with the homeless. So we say you got to forget about how big the problem is and think about the person. If you start thinking about the person, then you can help them. This is Eddie. He was living in his van. His best friends dropped him off at the mission. If you notice the picture between the guys we were helping in the 50s and the people we're helping now, can you see any age difference? Used to be that the average guy that came to the mission was about 62 years old, excuse me. And now it's about, average age is 28 to 30. So why the younger population? So the drugs that people are using now are much stronger and harder to get off of, and easy to get. And so it used to be just alcohol. And that was the driving force to get a guy down to the mission. So now we're dealing with meth, and Eddie had a family with 3 kids, and he sacrificed all of that for a meth addiction. I'll tell you about Eddie if I have time. This is Naomi. This is a classic gal who comes to Anna Ogden Hall looking for help. Does she look super happy? So what you don't see here is that she lost her kids just before she came here because CPS intervened and took her children away. So we're helping a lot of women with a lot of anger issues, love and relationship issues that have turned codependent and turned into domestic violence. So we don't ask people what's wrong with you. We ask people what happened to you. If you ask people what's wrong with you, it's a judgment. If you ask them what's going on, what happened in your life to lead you to this, we find out there's a story behind that person and a story that is worth understanding. So because I'm just about out of time, I wanted to show just a couple more.
As a little kid.
Oops. Sorry, I want to let you listen to one of these stories, and then we're going to have these two guys come on up. So let me let you listen to this quick narrative. It's an audio track, and we had a little girl read it as if she was a younger person. So here it comes.
As a little kid, I just remember being afraid all the time, hiding in my closet, not wanting to go near my dad. I remember coming home with my mom in the station wagon when I was like 5 or 6, and the puppy running up to me. I asked, "Mommy, why does the dog have hamburger on his eye?" My dad had hit the dog in the head, so hard his eye had popped out. Violence runs in my family. My dad's dad died in Walla Walla State Prison while serving a sentence for murder. Most of my dad's anger was directed at my mom. I remember hiding in my room, listening to my dad beat her. He didn't work, so he never really got a break. He was always there, and he was always angry or drunk, or both. When I got older, my mom started staying in bed a lot. She used prescription painkillers to numb the pain. As a teenager, I started trying to stick up for her, and sometimes he'd hit me too. My mom and I were in and out of domestic violence shelters 20 different times when I was a kid. We could never figure out a better solution, so we always ended up going back. I never learned what love was supposed to look like, or what it meant to have value. I just learned how to survive.
So we have about 200 women staying with us tonight that have similar or worse stories than that. And if you can understand their story, you can start to feel their pain. And that's why we exist, because we want to get to that pain, and because we know that the drugs and the alcohol and the addictions, the relationships that they're in that are domestic violence related, are destroying them and their children. And their only way out is to come and get some help over a long period of time. So we have a formula for change, and we say it's grace plus truth plus time plus community equals change. And so I want to have these guys come up because these are business partners in Coeur d'Alene. This is Brad and this is Stephanie, and they're the owners of the Carmel Kitchen. Yeah, thank you there, James. So I'm going to ask them a few questions, but without business partners like you guys who can see that there's a need, we'll just continue to have people who are struggling. And if people are not coming through our door, they're going to be coming through your window, right? So we want people to come to us so we can help them get their life together. And these two have stepped up with their business and helped make that happen for lots of people like Elizabeth, who's going to tell you her story in just a minute. So Brad, why don't we, or Stephanie, whoever wants to answer this question, tell us a little bit about your business, first of all, and what you do.
Okay, so, is this on? Okay, great. We own a specialty caramel sauce business, so we handcraft all natural caramel sauces, and right now we're currently in the Silver Lake Mall.
Okay, and how did that happen?
It started in our kitchen, so we're the typical homemade business. I started making it years ago and gave it out as gifts, and people kept asking for more, and pretty soon people I didn't know were calling me saying they got it from one of our neighbors, and Brad encouraged me to consider making it a business, and I just wanted to stay in my kitchen. Okay. And so we did the farmer's market in Hayden, and from there we started doing events around our area into Seattle. And it just kept growing and growing, and God blessed us, and we got our location that we're in now in the Silver Lake Mall, and we've been there for just over 4 years now.
Okay, so let's take it over here with you, Brad, for a second. So you gave up a business of your own to come do this. Was that a little gutsy, or what were you thinking?
Yeah, well, timing was good. Stephanie had supported me in my financial planning business for over 20 years, and I had a chance to exit that business. And so I was in between trying to figure out what I was going to do, and she started making the caramel sauce. And what she didn't tell you is she went down to Coeur d'Alene. What's the event downtown? Taste of Coeur d'Alene. And she had taught me to make the caramel, and so I was helping her at home doing the caramel. We took half of our garage that used to be the golf cart garage, and we turned it into a little kitchen. So we had room to make it there. And she was selling it so fast down over the weekend is all I could do to keep up and make it. It was 100 degrees in our garage, and this is August, and she wound up selling like $8,000 or $9,000 worth of caramel that weekend. I was like, okay, we got something there.
Yeah.
We just need to do more rinse and repeat.
Yeah. So were you in the financial advising business before? So, I mean, that was probably gutsy of you to just give it up and dive in.
Yeah, it was a big change, yeah.
Okay. So now, and you've got kids, right? It's not like you guys are just taking a shot at it without any responsibility, right?
3 kids.
Yeah, I really saw the opportunity because I was gone traveling all the time with my business, and I wasn't getting to see our kids grow up. So I wanted the opportunity to see the kids grow up and be home more and support Stephanie in her dream.
So how did you get involved with UGM, and how did that all take place?
Well, when I was in high school, I lived over in the Seattle area, and I was part of a youth group that went down about once a month and served dinners at the UGM shelter in Seattle. And I just always remember it just being a very rewarding experience and very eye-opening. I was in a middle-class suburb of Seattle, and to go out on the streets was way out of my comfort zone. And I saw the need that there was, and I saw brokenness. And so it always was just in the back of my head. And we homeschooled for a while, and we would take our kids down to the women's shelter in Coeur d'Alene, and we served lunch with them every Tuesday while we homeschooled, and just to give them an opportunity to see that the kids that were in the shelter were just like them. And they're no different. They just need love, and they just need to be accepted. And so I think my kids had a very rewarding experience with that. And so as our business started to grow and we started to take on employees, I knew that, yes, we wanted our business to be profitable, but I also had a deep desire to make our business more than just about us earning a living. And so I was very passionate about how can we just partner with someone, and I didn't know what that looked like yet, and I didn't at that time even know that UGM had a business practicum. But we called just out of the blue, just said, let's just call UGM and see if there's even a way that some of the girls that are at the shelter would want to come in and just help us. And that's how we learned that they had a practicum, and it was just an amazing opportunity. We're very close to the shelter. We had an extra vehicle that we gave the girls that had driver's license to use to transport themselves back and forth. And for us, it was a win-win. It gave some of the girls a chance to really have a job for the first time, some of them, and some of them for the first time sober. And so it's a little messy sometimes, but it's been amazing to see growth. Yeah. And it's been for us, very fulfilling.
Yeah. So what Stephanie's saying is, so we want you to have a chance to go prove that you can make it in the real world when you leave our program. So we set up a program that is a 240-hour practicum at a place of business where you are working for free. So as employers, you don't pay our people, you just let them work with you, and we have them shadow you or do something at your workplace that allows them to show I'm drug-free, I'm responsible, I'm honest, I'm gonna show up on time, I'm gonna dress appropriately, I'm gonna get along with my employees, all those soft skill things that we all take for granted, but sometimes our people don't always know. So we're teaching those, even how to have a conversation with somebody at the lunch table. I mean, basic things. So for a business owner to jump in and to do what these guys have done, it's risky because you don't always know what you're getting into. And sometimes it's tough because maybe someone's going to steal from you, right? And that's a risk you take. And I'd like to know, Has that ever happened to you, Brad? Okay. So how do you deal with something like that?
Just like you would any other employee, you have boundaries and conversations. I think for me, what was really helpful in my previous business, I didn't have a lot of patience or tolerance, and I think UGM has really helped slow me down and remind me that shouldn't remind me, but just through the process of praying with the employees and keeping God in the center of the business has really helped center me and make it a more personal experience, as more than just a employer-employee relationship. And that we're all human, we all make mistakes, stuff happens, and firing somebody or being really hard on somebody, which I was really good at before, didn't always work. And so it was really good to go through some of the challenges and struggles that we have with some of the girls, whether it be just not showing up on time, but helping them through that process of learning how to win, I think is maybe a good way to say it.
How many women have you had working for you?
I think it's been over 20. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of part-time, with the seasonal help with Christmas and then in the summer and whatnot. But it's been a great opportunity. And not most of all the girls we've paid. It hasn't all been through practicum. Mm-hmm. So it's been a good opportunity for us to teach them how to deal with a paycheck and even get a bank account, and just getting to help them outside of the shop.
Has it been rewarding for you at all?
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. My main goal when we knew we were going to start working with UGM, and I remember when we had our first lady come and we did an interview, and she was so nervous, and it was the first interview she's ever done, and we already knew she was going to come on board because we just the minute she sat down, I'm like, okay, we want her with us. And I just reached over and I just grabbed her hand. I'm like, you're doing fine. You've got this. And I just always want to have a place where, at the end of the day, we make caramel sauce. Okay, we're not doing brain surgery. It's
Supposed to be fun.
It's supposed to be fun. And I never want anyone coming into our shop feeling like their past life defines who they are now. And there are decisions I've made in my life where if I would have made one more decision, I could have been in their same place. So I just feel that the grace of God has been on me to not take me down that path, but it's now my opportunity to show them that they are a new creation in Christ, and they do not have to be defined by what their past was. And I just feel that that's the most important thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would like to have you meet one of their employees, and I don't know what her title is, but I think it's like...
She's the Caramel Jedi.
The Caramel Jedi. Okay. So, Brad, why don't you introduce Elizabeth?
Going up, Elizabeth. This is pretty exciting to get to introduce you to Elizabeth. She, as business owners, you guys know, the most important thing that we can be doing is working on our business, not in our business, right? And Elizabeth is the one that allows me to work on the business, not in it. So thank you for that. Yes. She runs everything in the shop. She makes the caramel, she bottles the caramel, she hires, she works and trains and does the selling. And then Stephanie and Elizabeth now have their online cooking show that they do every Monday. That's Cooking with Caramel. Tuesdays, sorry. She's working on it on Monday and then shows on Tuesday. So anyway, I don't want to steal Elizabeth's thunder, but she has been an absolute key to our success in the business.
That's amazing. Okay, we're going to sit down, Elizabeth, while you do your thing.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah. Cool.
Let's
I'm just really glad that Brad and Stephanie have already heard my testimony, which was actually just a few weeks ago, because it's pretty intense, like not really one that you want your employers to hear. But I just want to let you guys know that they never one time judged me. As soon as I walked in there, they never asked me what my problem was, why I was at UGM, or, if I was a drug addict. They never asked me anything like that. So I just got to say, okay, perfect. So I just want to say that I really appreciated that about them. And so whenever I got the opportunity to invite them to my testimony, I took that and they got to hear it, so now they'll get to hear a little bit more. But I'm just going to jump right in, tell you guys a little bit about me. I grew up south of here, down in the middle of nowhere on the Coeur d'Alene Reservation, and I grew up on a ranch, and I grew up working a lot. I remember making fences with my brother whenever I was about 8 years old. We did firewood, we did hay, we did all of that kind of stuff, so I worked a lot whenever I was a kid. And whenever I was 10 years old, I started experiencing really highs and lows that were not normal for a girl my age. And I would stay up for days on my highs, and on my lows, I would be very obsessed with the thought of suicide. And I had a journal that I was writing in about wanting to commit suicide, and my mom found it. And she took me to a counselor right away. And I was diagnosed bipolar by the time I was 11. And that was a big deal in my family because it wasn't really acceptable to be having a mental illness. And I was the only one in my family, so it was something that my mom really cared about. She didn't want other people to know. She really cared about what other people thought, and that really bothered me. So my relationship with my mom was very explosive. My dad worked 24/7. He was gone 14 hours out of the day. I never saw him unless he was around to discipline me. So by the time I was 12, I started running away all the time. I started smoking pot. I started drinking whenever I was 12. And by the time I was 13, I started looking to men to fill that emptiness that I had. I was really alone. And any guy that I could find that would give me any attention, I was right there with him. And it just made things worse for me. And by the time I was 14, I was in and out of juvie for running away all the time. And that's whenever I started my lifetime career of being on probation. I dropped out of school, and I also used meth for the first time whenever I was 14. And I remember thinking whenever I used IV, the first time that I shot up. And I remember thinking that I want to do this every day for the rest of my life. I had finally found that piece that I had been missing. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up, and it just filled that emptiness. It made everything go away, and I felt okay. Whenever I was 15, I finally got what I wanted. I found a 22-year-old man that would take care of me, and my parents stopped calling me in as a runaway. They threw in the towel, and they just were done with me. So I moved in with this man who was also an addict, and he was old enough to buy alcohol, but he was a functioning addict, so he worked, he had a job, and he provided for me. And whenever I was 16, I got pregnant, and we had a daughter, and also got married. My relationship with him was very abusive. I was in and out of the hospital all the time. Seems like I was in and out of courtrooms all the time too, begging the judge to let him come back home because he would get arrested for domestic violence. They'd put a no contact order on him, and then I'd be in the courtroom asking them to lift it. So he'd come home, and I went through that cycle for years. By the time I was 20, I had two abortions. I was actively using. I was still in and out of jail all the time. And I was on my way to have my third abortion when that's the first time that I heard God speak to me. I didn't know that it was God speaking to me at the time, but I just got this overwhelming feeling whenever I was on my way to Spokane to pull over. And I heard this voice say to me, "Go home and get clean." So that was the first time that I ever really got clean, the first time that I ever stopped using drugs, but I didn't really know what I was doing, so I'm not going to say that I was in recovery. But I went home, and I left my husband, and I had my son, and that was short-lived. I started drinking alcohol, and that led me right back to a relapse. So as soon as I relapsed, my kids went to go and live with my parents, so at that time I had 2 kids. That's whenever my addiction started getting really bad. I met my second husband during that time, and I went from a functioning addict, abusive a functioning addict, to a criminal, basically. So, but he didn't hit me. So he introduced me to the streets. He was gang affiliated. We were constantly burglarizing things. I took part in robberies, selling drugs, anything to survive. And whenever I was 23, I ended up in prison for 1 out of 3 stints. So when I'd be in and out of prison during these years, and during that time, I was kidnapped on a debt that my husband owed. I've been shot at so many times that I cannot count. I've watched my friends overdose and die. I've held my best friend who died in my arms in a drive-by shooting. And I ended up having my 3rd child in prison. So in 2015, I got out of prison for the third time. And this time I really did want to make a go at being clean and staying away from the life that I had been living. So I got a divorce from my husband while I was in prison. I got out and I started dating a probation officer. So it was like totally opposite of the men that I had dated in the past. You know, he was clean, he had boundaries, he respected me, he was not abusive, and I started working at the casino. So needless to say, I don't know if any of you know, but addiction and the casino go hand in hand. So I basically, as soon as I started working there, I basically relapsed, and then I started living a double life. I lived with my boyfriend, and me and him were on opposite shifts. So he didn't know what I was doing. He was at work during the day whenever I was supposed to be sleeping, and I wasn't sleeping, and then I'd be at work, and then I ended up getting fired, and ended up having to tell him the truth. So for a brief period of time, he kicked me out, and I wasn't really getting harassed by my parole officer because I was dating a probation officer. So, I kind of found the loop there whenever I was using, date a probation officer and your parole officer will leave you alone. So, when it all came crashing down, it was July 31st of 2018. I was in a trap house. I went to this house to sell some drugs. I'd been trying to shoot up all day long. All my veins were collapsed. I couldn't find a good vein to shoot up in, and I went into this bathroom, and my purse fell off of the counter onto the floor, and I reached down to pick it up, and I grabbed a ground wire, and I got electrocuted. It threw me back into the bathtub, and there was this big blue flash, and I just remember hitting the bathtub and, kind of being in there like this, and I had a near-death experience, and God basically showed me where I was going if I didn't turn my life around. And I wouldn't say that was whenever I started believing in God, because I was basically shown heaven and hell. And so I knew from that moment on that I was not going to be using anymore. I went straight out to the car. My hair was literally like, bzzzt. Everybody's looking at me like, "What happened to you?" And I'm like, "I gotta get out of here." And I go out to the car, and I prayed for the first time in I don't know how long. And the reason why I did not ever pray was because every time that I did pray, I would get arrested. So what happened, I went out there and I prayed and I got arrested. Within 10 minutes, I got arrested. So I ended up in jail again, and I was, like I said, I was on parole still, so I had racked up violations. I got arrested with stolen guns. I got arrested with more drugs. So I racked up all of these new charges, and I'm sitting in jail, and I'm just trusting that God has a plan for me. And then they hit me with a habitual offender charge. So I'm looking at 25 years minimum in prison right now. And I'm thinking, what the heck? That's not what I had in mind whenever he told me to get my life together, But it all ended up working out. My boyfriend ended up coming to, that probation officer, he wasn't my boyfriend at the time, but that probation officer that I was dating ended up coming to visit me in jail and gave me the opportunity to go to UGM. He said that he would help me get there and that I would just have to, do the rest of the footwork after that. So by the grace of God, it ended up working out that I was able to get out of new charges and my parole violations to get into the UGM program. And that used to be the end of my story whenever I used to give my testimony earlier in days, and that's how I got there. And little did I know that was just the beginning of my story. So whenever I got to the UGM, I was able to reunite with all of my kids. My oldest daughter, she's now 16, and she didn't want anything to do with me for years. I basically had to graduate the UGM program for her to rekindle her relationship with me. But now I've got the best relationship in the world with my oldest daughter. My youngest daughter came to live with me for the first time whenever she was 5 years old. She still lives with me, obviously, and my son's with us too. So I've got, I was able to reunite with my kids whenever I was at UGM. And let's see what else. I gold sealed from parole in December for the first time since I was 14. So I'm not on probation or parole anymore. Yeah. I graduated from the UGM program, and I think the best part of my story is that probation officer that took me to UGM is now my husband. He waited for me to finish the program, and we are now married, and in November, we flew over to North Carolina, and I got my tubes untied so that we could have more kids, and we're currently 6 weeks pregnant. So, yeah. And a huge part of my recovery is Carmel Kitchen as well. Whenever I did my practicum there, I worked there prior to my practicum. I was a seasonal worker there, and I ended up doing my practicum there, and it's just been the biggest blessing to me. Like I said, I was never, ever judged whenever I walked in there. I was looked at for who I am today, not what I've done in the past or, anything that I've been through. So I am more than happy to manage that business. It's a part of my life. It's a part of me, so that's what I got. Yeah.
Thanks. Would you hire her? Okay, you would now. But I think what I've seen Brad and Stephanie do is amazing, and a lot of other businesses, 130 other businesses do what they do. So our clientele looks down the list to see which employer they would be most interested in. And then we set up an interview, and they go out and they have a chance to get to know one of our business partners, and then we place them, and we see where it goes. And if they have problems, they come back and they work it through with us. If they work out like Elizabeth did, it turns into a life-changing experience for both them and hopefully a business partner. So I wanted to transition now, and I was going to have James introduce Rod, but I think I'll go ahead and do it. Okay, James? So Rod and I go back probably 20-something years. He's the bug guy. So if you've got a yellow jacket trap in your backyard, you can thank Rod for the insect. So Rod, why don't you come on up, and I want Rod to spend just a couple minutes sharing a little bit of his story and why he's connected with UGM.
This on in front of all these people, right? That's so embarrassing. Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me? Is it working?
I think you're good.
Okay. Oops, this is where my speech is. So he told me I had 30 or 40 minutes, so I don't know any of you, so I could go on and on and on, and I will probably never see you ever again, so I really don't care what I really say. So Dave calls me up, and he says, I've been offered this opportunity to share a little bit about UGM, and I want to use a couple people in my program and talk about what UGM means to them, why they're involved, and things like that. That's all he told me. Okay, so when I came in here and I heard, I think James, or I saw on there, rich and profit and prosperity, I'm thinking, am I at an Amway meeting or something like that? Hopefully not. Hopefully not. There's a funny story about Amway, but I don't have time for that. So I thought I'd give you maybe three things, a little history and background. So you probably recognize my last name, Schneidmiller. My family's been here since 1948. In fact, my dad and my uncle bought a dairy right across the freeway. In fact, the freeway wasn't even in. In fact, the freeway cut our dairy in half. And while most people were fighting the interstate, my dad and my uncle were embracing it because they knew somewhere down the road that land was going to be worth more than the $25 an acre they paid for it. They sold it by the square inch or square foot. My dad and my uncle, fortunately for me, got out of the dairy business before I was born, and so if you go back in time, how many here are second generation Idaho people? Wow. So none of you people have any history whatsoever. Good for you. So anyway, you go back 40 or 50 years, and the whole prairie was not houses, was not businesses, was not streets and paved and lights. It was all Kentucky bluegrass. And names like Satchwell, Bodine, Jacqueline, Schneidmiller, Armstrong, those were the names. And that was all the farmland out here. And I was sharing with, I can't remember who, and I said, in the summer, we'd be on a combine, and the only light you would see would be another farmer's combine further down the road or further out in the fields. There were no lights. In fact, we used I-90 to move our combines from Liberty Lake to Coeur d'Alene at 5:30 in the morning. There was no one on the freeway. And we would just, and I remember as a 14-year-old driving a combine up I-90, back in the day. And so anyway, and then if you go on cell T's and that railroad trestle that's still there that goes across, as you're going towards, you're on cell T's, you're going towards like Montrose. There's a big dent in that trestle. I put it there. I was driving one of our family's tractors with a big harrow up. No one told me not to go that way. And all of a sudden, the tractor just jerks up. I had hit the thing. And fortunately, it was the measuring arm, but it put a big old dent in the trestle. And anyway, it was stuck there, and we had to get it all unstuck. But it's still there. So I have left a lasting impression in Post Falls, Idaho. What's that? Yeah, my signature, yeah. So anyway, it's now obviously has changed. My family doesn't raise bluegrass anymore. My family has been in the house development business for a long, long time. I'm not part of that, but some of my cousins are. So the second part was that I was told was this was purpose for profit or profit for purpose. And anyone here associated with or part of a non-profit organization? Show of hands. Non-profit. Okay. So if I ruffle a few feathers, give me a little bit of grace, because we're talking about grace, right? Okay. So about 20 years ago, I was invited to a pretty much a job fair, and it was Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, Idaho, Washington, and Oregon. And what it was a faith-based job fair. And there was probably 25 to 30 different Christian organizations that were looking for the cream of the crop, okay? And I was invited to that. I was invited to speak. And so there was probably 40 or 50 students from those various colleges. And these were nonprofits that were looking for them to partner with them, to join their organization, to work, but it wouldn't be work that they could pay them. They would have to go out and raise support to have the privilege of working for those nonprofits. Nothing wrong with that. So I'm up there, and I'm thinking, well, I'm not a nonprofit. I'm a profit for a corporation, things like that. So I got up there, and I said, you know what? I'm probably going to tick off everybody in this room. Not the students, but the nonprofits. Because I said, if it wasn't for my type of business, none of these nonprofits would exist. Oh, you could see the faces out there. And it's like, oh, really? So anyway, what the thing was, you gave about 2 minutes about what your business did or what the nonprofit did. Well, they were going to have 2 breakout sessions, and you go to these little rooms. Well, when it went to the breakout, all the kids came to mind. Not because I'm some great speaker, but it challenged them, like, what, because, and especially in some of these schools, if they're going to Christian schools, and I sent my son to Biola. He was in the honors program. Dave had a son there. And everybody talks about nonprofits. When I graduate, I'm going to have a nonprofit. Oh, you are so good. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. So anyway, they all showed up at my deal. And I really ticked off the nonprofits. But what I was trying to convince these young people is you can make just as much or even a greater impact by able to have a successful business that you can then partner with nonprofits. And you can also employ people, and that they have their dreams, and those dreams can be realized also. Anyway, so that was my little spiel on profit. But I really believe profit for a purpose. Now, maybe initially the purpose is to feed your family, or to have a nest egg so you can send your kids to college or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that. But maybe somewhere down the road you have the opportunity, not only employing people, but maybe you have opportunities to help those inside your company or help those less fortunate. I really appreciated what you guys had to say. It's interesting. I started in my wife's kitchen. I blew it up. She kicked me out and she threw me into the garage, okay? And then from a garage, I went to a barn. From a barn, I went to 1,500 square feet. Today, I'm in 275,000 square feet, okay? Now, it's taken 40 years to get there, but this is what made this country great, is because we still have opportunity to, with our sweat of our brow, with the grace of God, to do things that he's given us a talent to do. And we can be successful. So what is my connection with UGM? So my father was raised in a very Germanic family. They are part of what is known as the Volga Germans in this area. It was a German colony that went from Germany to a place called, in the Volga River in southwestern Russia. And it was a German colony, and there was nobody down there, and they developed it. And then a Tsar came into power and said, Russia for Russians. And they took it all away from the Germans. And my grandmother and my grandfather, with 4 kids, stole away in the dead of winter to get away from that because they knew that there was no opportunity there. And in fact, it was my grandmother said to my grandpa, we got to get out of here. And so they said goodbye to their families, but they would never, ever see again. Made their way to Liverpool, England. And then at that time, it was before World War I, but it was close. They weren't letting Germans into this country. But Canada was welcoming them with open arms. My grandfather and my grandmother with a few kids in tow, and then they had a mess of them up there in Calgary. He worked for this, the Canadian Pacific Railroad. And he earned enough money to come down here to buy land in St. John. And that's where the family started. The thing is it was a very industrious family, very entrepreneurial. My dad and my uncle were very entrepreneurial. They invented equipment to help farm, grass seed, and things like that. On my mom's side of the family, again, entrepreneurial. But that's where the difference stopped. My dad's side of the family were teetotalers. If you know what that means in Idaho, that means they didn't drink. Okay, they drank water, but they didn't have any alcohol. On the other side, my mom's side of the family were social drinkers. And again, I'm not coming down on anybody here for social drinking. Unfortunately, it turned into addictions. The first successful glass company in Spokane, Washington in 1928 was started by my grandfather. The second successful glass company was his son, my Uncle Bud, who couldn't get along with his dad, in City Glass in Spokane, Washington. They drank it all up. 2 amazing businesses burnt to the ground. Lost family, lost everything. In fact, my Uncle Bud, in a drunken stupor, fell asleep. The cigarette started the fire. And the beautiful cabin that they had, a 3-story mansion basically on Twin Lakes, burnt to the ground with him in it. And I remember this distinctly. We were going, and my grandmother was driving. I'm like 8 or 9 years old, and we're going by the Mission on Brown or wherever it was right there. And my grandmother was just cursing it left and right. And I didn't quite understand at that time. And it wasn't because UGM had failed them, but for some reason she saw that as, why didn't my family plug in there and get fixed? And they didn't. And so I've seen both. And so when I started my business, one of the things I wanted to do was, if I could be a part, my wife and I, if we could be a part of something that transforms people. And I mean, you heard Elizabeth's story. It's amazing. It's not just her. It is hundreds and hundreds. And the other thing that it does is, inside my company, we get behind and we do things for the ladies' shelters. We provide Christmas gifts for all the kids on Christmas morning. And you should see what that means to the people inside my company. Especially with this year of COVID, with every, well, we're in Washington, right? You know, the liberal, you know, fortress over there. Everything is locked up, locked down. It's getting a little better. But for the most part, everyone could only go to work if your work could be open. We were considered essential. We deal with public health pests. We support animal health and also the food industry. So we had 3 classifications that we could stay open. But as you notice, it was difficult. Even with that, with social distancing, wearing the mask and things like that. And after a while, I mean, people start to go kind of nutty. And so having these other things where we could actually reach out and help others was a huge, huge tonic for our employees, that they could still make an impact for others that are suffering. So that's my spiel. And so what we did was I started early on what we call community care. So we pay our employees up to 2 weeks of volunteering, whether it's teaching kids how to read. We had one guy, really good skier, was teaching blind students how to ski at Mount Spokane. And so what we have found is, especially with these younger generation, you know, these millennials. My gosh, almost everybody out here is a millennial, right? You know, do you know that a millennial will make a decision whether they want to work for you after the first day? That's a statistic. It's a real one. And so in other words, if they have had a bad experience that first day, they've already written you off. Now, they may hang around a little longer before they find their next job, but one day. And, you know, one of the first things they ask you is, you know, what are you doing to impact the world? And I'll tell you what, when we tell that we're working with UGM and the women's shelters and things like that, the lights go on. And they realize, hey, this is making an impact. I can get behind this. You know, I'm a Christian. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. And when I stand before God, God isn't going to care how many fly traps I built. And I build millions of them, okay? He's not going to care. He's going to care, what did you do with the resources that I gifted you, okay? Now, I'm not saying I live in a cave. I live in a nice home, and I drive a nice car, and I go on nice vacations, okay? And I have no guilt about that. But when I stand before God, I want to hear, good and faithful servant. Thank you.